What if the stories that have guided humanity for thousands of years aren't original? What if the very foundations of your beliefs are built on something much, much older? We often think of our major world religions as unique, divinely inspired, and separate from one another. We see their sacred texts as the ultimate source of truth, handed down through generations. But when we peel back the layers of history, a different picture begins to emerge. A picture that's not about separation, but about connection. A story not of divine revelation, but of human evolution. Let's journey back, way back, before the famous prophets and saviors we know today. Let's go to ancient Sumer, to Egypt, to Persia. Here, in the cradle of civilization, we find myths and legends that sound eerily familiar. We find stories of virgin births, great floods that wipe the slate clean, and gods who die only to be resurrected. These aren't just coincidences. They are the echoes of our collective past, whispering through time. Consider the story of Horus, the ancient Egyptian sky god. Born to the virgin Isis, his birth was announced by a star in the east and witnessed by 3 wise men. He had 12 disciples, performed miracles like walking on water and healing the sick, and was eventually betrayed, crucified, and resurrected after 3 days. Does any of that sound familiar? The parallels to the life of Jesus are so striking that many scholars believe they can't be accidental. It suggests that the story of Jesus wasn't created in a vacuum, but was woven from the threads of much older myths that had resonated with people for centuries. And it's not just Horus. Look at Mithras, a Persian deity whose worship was popular in the Roman Empire. Mithras was also born on December 25th, had 12 disciples, and his followers celebrated a sacred meal of bread and wine. Or Dionysus, the Greek god of wine, who was said to turn water into wine and was called the Son of God and the King of Kings. These stories predate Christianity, sometimes by thousands of years. It's as if humanity has been telling the same fundamental story over and over again, just with different characters and settings. So how did this happen? It's simple, really. As cultures and empires expanded, they didn't just conquer lands, they absorbed stories. When the Romans conquered a new territory, they often syncretized the local gods with their own. They found common ground, blending deities and myths to create a more unified spiritual landscape. It was a brilliant way to integrate new populations without erasing their entire cultural identity. The stories that were most powerful, most emotionally resonant, were the ones that survived, adapted, and were passed on. Now, let's talk about the political angle, because this is where things get really interesting. Religion has never been separate from power. Throughout history, rulers and empires have used spiritual beliefs to unify their people, justify their rule, and maintain social order. Think about the Roman Emperor Constantine. When he converted to Christianity in the 4th century, it wasn't just a personal spiritual awakening. It was a masterful political move. He saw a growing, organized faith that could help unify his fracturing empire. The Council of Nicaea, which Constantine convened in 325 AD, is a perfect example of this. This wasn't just a gathering of theologians discussing scripture. It was a state-sponsored event designed to standardize Christian belief. Doctrines were debated, voted on, and solidified. Gospels that didn't fit the newly approved narrative, like the Gospel of Thomas or the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, were branded as heresy and excluded from what would become the Holy Bible. What we read today as sacred scripture is, in many ways, the product of political committees. They decided which stories were true and which were false, shaping the course of Western civilization for the next 2 millennia. The texts weren't just chosen for their spiritual merit, but for their ability to support a centralized, hierarchical power structure. This brings us to a mind-bending twist. What if the idea of a single, all-powerful, male god wasn't always the dominant belief? Archaeological evidence suggests that for much of early human history, divinity was seen as female. We find thousands of Venus figurines from the Stone Age, celebrating fertility and the life-giving power of the Earth Mother. Early societies were often matrilineal, and their spiritual focus was on the cyclical nature of life, death, and rebirth, embodied by a powerful goddess. So where did she go? The shift towards monotheistic, patriarchal religions coincided with the rise of agriculture, private property, and warfare. A sky father god, a god of law, order, and conquest, was better suited to this new world order than a nurturing Earth Mother. The old ways were suppressed, the goddesses were either demoted to minor roles or demonized, and a new spiritual narrative was written, one that placed man, and a male god, at the center of the universe. The very idea of God, as we know him today, might be a relatively recent invention, a political and social construct designed for a new kind of society. So what does all this mean? Does it mean that your faith is a lie? Not necessarily. It doesn't invalidate the personal comfort, moral guidance, or sense of community that religion provides for billions of people. But it does challenge the idea of absolute, exclusive truth. It suggests that our spiritual stories are not static revelations, but are fluid, evolving, human creations. They are a tapestry woven from countless threads of myth, history, and politics. They reflect our deepest hopes, our greatest fears, and our eternal quest for meaning in a vast and mysterious universe. Perhaps the real truth isn't found in believing one story is the only right one. Perhaps it's found in recognizing the shared human impulse behind all of them. The desire to understand our place in the cosmos, to connect with something larger than ourselves, and to tell stories that give our lives meaning. The names of the gods may change, the rituals may differ, but the human heart that seeks them remains the same. What if the real divine spark isn't in an ancient text, but in our shared capacity to imagine, to believe, and to create these beautiful, powerful stories in the first place? What if we are the authors of our own sacred narratives? What do you think? Are these connections just coincidences, or do they point to a deeper, shared human story? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you enjoy diving deep into the mysteries of our past, make sure to subscribe to History Beyond Time. Thanks for watching.